When you hear the word archaeologist, most people think of digging, and yeah, but this only makes up around 10% of their job. In fact, in some cases, they can tell more about a demolished building on the surface rather than just its old foundations. Case in point, Knaresborough Castle. When the castle was ordered to be demolished by Oliver Cromwell, the people of the town took the stones and made new buildings, many of which survive today, and some stones still carry mason marks and decorations. It's the ultimate form of recycling. The railways are guilty of this too. At Locomotion, several structures exist that used the stone sleepers from the Stockton and Darlington Railway. You can even see where the chairs holding the rails were pinned in. But when a structure simply vanishes with no evidence and no apparent reuse of the resources, it does send archaeologists' heads scratching, especially when that structure is a massive, multi-arched viaduct. The Welsh valleys and mountains have been associated with mining and ironworking since the Roman period. Its mix of coal, fuel and iron and tin are the perfect mix of both fuel and ore. Considering this was the time period where horse and cart was king, moving any form of freight was very difficult, and goods would take days or even weeks to arrive. In the 1780s, a 12,000-acre patch of land called Lord Abergavenny's Hills was becoming available due to the leases expiring, and almost straight away industrialists gathered to propose tenders with landowner Harry Neville, the current Earl at the time. After swift negotiations, 3 businessmen collaborated together for the mining contract, this being Thomas Hill, Thomas Hopkins and Ben Pratt. Hill and Company worked quickly and got the bulk of the ironworks open before the end of the decade. It cost nearly £40,000 to build and would be the largest employer in the area with up to 300 men, many highly skilled in ironmongering. They also had to be housed, so that ironworks gave birth to a huge population spike in the area. Within 2 years of operation, the population of Blaenavon had gone from a few hundred to a few thousand. The next obstacle was to move coal from the nearby mines to feed the 3 monstrous forges the site now had. The first thought was to use the road and turnpike, but turnpikes carried expense, the roads were uneven, and going up and down the valley was very time consuming. The idea to use tracks goes back many years, and miners relied on them to get ores out of the mine quickly and easily. Tracks could be made from any medium, but the most common was wood and stone. Blaenavon Ironworks knew that iron would be more durable, so they decided to use a railway, but horse and cart would still be the vehicles. But a railway would be quicker and ultimately cheaper, as not paying the outside parties. To help get the coal from the mines and across the valley, the bosses decided to build a viaduct. It's unknown who designed this viaduct nor who built it, but it was reported to span the valley with 10 large arches and the rails covered with a brick cowling. Within the arches, houses were built where workers would live. It would be the first railway viaduct, and while the claim can't really be substantiated, it was clear it was one of the earliest examples. The viaduct opened with no fanfare or grand ceremony and worked well, ferrying coal from the mines while families enjoyed the housing below. It's difficult to know numbers or the living conditions, but for 25 years the viaduct did its job without incident. However, over time, waste from the ironworks began to accumulate at the base of the viaducts. The people moved away from the bases, and it wasn't long before the viaduct was simply buried in waste. But it didn't stop there. Long after the viaduct was out of use, the waste and general dirt reached the roof, covering it completely. Soon, the viaduct faded into memory. Over the course of the 19th and 20th century, the mine and the ironworks would undergo drastic changes and become the principal works in the country. Its heyday was right in the middle of the railway boom, and by 1840 a new town had sprung up, independent from the ironworks. But as quick as it had sprung up, it was just as quick to shut down. It stopped iron production in 1904. Before the start of the Second World War, the site had closed completely as the steelworks had also dried up. The site was left almost untouched for decades, and in its abandonment it was left in remarkable condition. In 2000, the site was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the area had been transformed into a museum and tourist site. But what about the viaduct? Historians knew the viaduct existed thanks to old documents and an etching. However, no evidence existed of its removal. There are no documents citing its demolition, nor were there any surrounding buildings made from the stone. It was a mystery as to what happened to it. The mystery was solved by TV programme Time Team. Time Team was an hour-long TV show presented by Tony Robinson and aired in the mid-1990s. The show focused on real-time archaeological excavations led by a team of archaeologists. The team led excavations over the course of 3 days, usually with an outward goal. After the dig is completed, the team would share their findings with the local community. Time Team was, and still is, a staple in my house, and it most likely cemented my love of history. In 2000, Time Team was asked to come to Blaenavon to find the viaduct. The team used maps and guides, but finally on the third day, and after digging a trench more than 12 metres deep, the deepest trench ever dug, the team were able to locate the roof of the viaduct. What was even greater was that the roof was intact, and a remote camera proved the tunnel was perfectly preserved. Unfortunately, the team were unable to dig further due to safety concerns. It is certain that the rest of the viaduct is in just as good a condition as the roof. But strangely, this isn't the only instance a viaduct has been buried. In Yorkshire, the East Lancashire Viaduct is almost completely buried when the railway closed, and paths over the viaduct are exposing the brickwork underneath, and the tops of the arches are still visible. But after Time Team left, the holes in Blaenavon were filled, and although calls have been made to dig out the viaduct again, considering its depth, it's almost impossible, making it one of the few structures to forever be preserved under your feet.